Hi guys, let's start the video with the positive quote. Balance is not something you find, it's something you create. Balance is not something you find, it's something you create. In this video, we are going to see about quantitative research designs, its symbolic representations, characteristics, methods of randomization, and regarding bias, and how to prevent the bias that occurs in quantitative research design. Experimental research design. What do you mean by experimental research design? It's nothing but it contains three characteristics. One is manipulation, second intervention, and control group. Let's see the symbolic presentations in experimental research designs. R stands for random assignment of the subjects to groups. O stands for observation or measurement of dependent variable, and X stands for experimental treatment or intervention. True experimental design or randomized control trial. Essential characteristics of true experimental research design. First, manipulation. Second, control. Third, randomization. Manipulation is nothing but treatment, and control means how to control the extraneous variables. So it includes three types of control. One is negative control, second, clear control, third, positive control. Negative control means the group doesn't receive intervention or any placebo. And clear control, in this group, they will be receiving placebo, and positive control, they will be receive existing traditional intervention or an alternative intervention. The placebo is nothing but instead of any intervention, they will be giving some medicine, but there will be no effect on that. Manipulation. Manipulation refers to conscious control of the independent variable by the researcher through treatment or intervention to observe its effect on dependent variable. Manipulation means that something is purposefully changed by the researcher in the environment. Control. Control refers to the use of control group and control over the effects of extraneous variables on the dependent variable which researcher is interested. The subjects in the control and experimental groups are similar in number and characteristics, but the subjects in the control group receive no experimental treatment or any interventions at all. The experimental group receives the planned treatment or intervention, and a comparison is made with the control group to observe the effect of this treatment or intervention. Randomization. Randomization is a statistical process that uses a random mechanism to assign subjects to groups or select a sample from a population by giving equal chance to all subjects. It's a fundamental part of scientific research methodology. Methods of randomization. There are four methods of randomization. A good randomization method must have three basic characteristics, that is, unpredictability. Every participant has to have similar option of getting any of the intervention which cannot be predicted by person allocating the intervention. 2. Balance. The intervention and control group must be of the same size and characteristics. 3. Simplicity. It should be easy for an investigator to implement it. Following are the commonly used methods of randomization in randomized control trial. 1. Symbol randomization. 2nd. Block randomization. 3rd. Stratified randomization. And the fourth is covariate adaptive randomization. First, simple randomization. It's a simple and convenient method of randomization. It can be carried out using the following techniques. First one, flip of a coin for each subject. Second, shuffle deck of cards. Third, throwing a dice. And fourth, a random table. First, flip of a coin for each subject. If the coin lands on its head, subjects are assigned to first group or experiential arm, and with tail subjects are assigned to second experimental arm or placebo or control group. Shuffle deck of cards. If even number appears, subjects are assigned to treatment groups, and in case of odd number, subjects are assigned to control group. Third, throwing a dice. If number comes below and equal to 3, subjects will be assigned to experiential groups, and if dice number comes above 3, subjects are assigned to control group. A random table. A complete random table is given, or a computer generated random table may be used to facilitate the randomization process. In this method, blindfolded subjects choose a number from a table of numbers horizontally, that means in the row, or vertically in the columns, till a requisite number is reached for both experimental and control groups. Next, block randomization. Here, the samples are divided into 3 blocks or 4 blocks. Then they will be dividing the blocks into interventional group and control group. Block randomization is a method for assigning participants to study groups by randomly selecting blocks and then assigning participants to the groups within each block. It can help prevent imbalance in sample allocation and increase the comparability between groups. Next, stratified randomization. Here, the population is categorized into different strata, and from there, random selection will be done for selecting the sample. Stratified randomization is a statistical sampling method that divides a population into subgroups or strata based on shared characteristics and then randomly assigns subjects to groups within those strata. The goal is to balance the influence of covariates or baseline characteristics among groups. Last, covariate adaptive randomization. Covariate adaptive randomization is a type of randomization method that uses covariate information to enhance the comparability between different treatment groups. Under such randomization, the covariate is usually well balanced, that is, the imbalance between the treatment group and placebo group is controlled. Allocation concealment. Allocation concealment is a technique used in randomized controlled trials to prevent participants and clinicians from knowing which treatment the patient will receive next. This is important because it helps to prevent selection bias, which can occur when patients are assigned to treatments based on factors other than randomization. Bias. Types of bias in research. Participants themselves report for any trials or selection of sample by non-random sampling techniques. It is known as response bias. Next, selection bias. If the participants are allocated to go for without randomization and lack of homogeneity between selected group, then selection bias occurs. Types of selection bias. Bias due to factors related to the study's participants, such as the choice of population or sampling and recruitment methods. Sampling bias occurs when some members of the intended population are less likely to be included than others. Survivorship bias occurs when successful observation or people are more likely to be represented in the sample than unsuccessful ones. Attrition bias occurs when participants who drop out of a study systematically differ from the ones who remain. Non-response bias occurs when people who refuse to participate or drop out systematically differ from those who take part. Volunteer bias occurs when people with specific characteristics are more likely to participate than others. Undercoverage bias occurs when some members of a population are inadequately represented in the sample. Next, recall bias. Patients who are aware about their allocation in experimental and or control group may affect their report of symptoms. A type of bias that can occur when data is collected retrospectively after an event has already happened. How to prevent recall bias? Recall bias refers to a systematic difference in the ability of participant groups to accurately recall information. It can be prevented by run a pilot to decide on an appropriate recall period for the subject, reduce the time interval, means reduce the time interval between the event and the assessment, use pre-existing records. If possible, use pre-existing records so you don't have to rely on participant experiences. Use a control group. Use a similar control group to compare the recall. Use good surveys. Formulate good questions to gather accurate and complete information. Next, performance bias. The participant and the research personnel are aware of treatment or placebo. This could lead to do better care or intervention for experimental group. Next, detection bias. When phenomenon is more likely to be observed for one group of subjects. Attrition bias. Withdrawal of participants from the study, which may lead to incomplete outcome of data from the trial. Reporting bias. In reporting bias, there are two types. One is publication bias. Positive results are more likely to be published as compared to negative results. Next, outcome bias. Selective outcome, reporting of outcome due to intended interest of industry. Confirmation bias. Examples of confirmation bias: not seeking out objective facts, interpreting information to support your existing belief, only remembering details that uphold your belief, ignoring information that challenges your belief. An unconscious bias that occurs when someone only uses evidence that supports their existing beliefs and ignores evidence that contradicts them. It is known as confirmation bias. Next, observer bias. A bias that occurs when researchers subtly the outcome of a study by changing how they interact with subjects or what they choose to see. Here in this pic, one person is seeing in the left side and he is telling it's 4, and the other one seeing from the right side He is telling it's not 4, it's 3. So both of them are correct, but their perception from their side, it varies. Next, survivorship or survival bias. A statistical bias that occurs when a researcher focuses only on data that has already been pre-selected and ignores data that was lost during the pre-selection process. Example, the person who will wakes up at 5 a.m. every day becomes CEO. But there are persons who also wakes up at 5 a.m. doesn't become CEO. So for those persons we will ignore and we will see only the persons who become CEO. So this is known as survivor bias. Next, non-response bias. A bias that occurs when the characteristics of people who don't respond to a survey impacts what their answers would have been if they have responded. Social desirability bias. A common source of bias that occurs when the respondents give incorrect answers to surveys in order to be liked or accepted. How to reduce social desirability bias? It occurs when respondents answer questions in line with social norms and expectation, concealing true opinions or experiences. Anonymity, that means protect the identity of participants to encourage more truthful answers. Wording, be careful of leading questions that can influence a respondent's answer. Use self administered questions. Respondents might answer more truthfully without the presence of the interviewer or other participants. Indirect questioning, ask respondents to make predictions about how someone like them would think or act to encourage truthful responses. First choice items. Explanation. Avoid providing a non response option, no opinion, so you can gather more specific answers. Self selection bias. A type of bias that occurs when respondents complete a survey or demographically or behaviorally different from the intended sample. Analysis bias. A bias that occurs when an analysis emphasis discounts certain data points to favor a particular result. Blinding or masking. Blinding, also known as masking, is a research technique that involves withholding information from people involving in a study to reduce the risk of bias. This information can include details about which treatment a participant is receiving or which group they are assigned to. Open trial. Open label trials or clinical trials that do not involve binding or masking, meaning that both the investigators and participants are aware of the treatment allocation. So, in open trial, both the investigators and the participants know what treatment they are going to get. This differs from double blinded trials where information is withheld from both the researchers and the participants to reduce bias. Single blind trial. A single blind trial study is a clinical trial design where the researcher knows which treatment or intervention intervention a party or treatment or intervention a participant is receiving. Single blind trial. A single blind study is a clinical trial design where only the researcher knows which treatment or intervention a participant is receiving. The participants don't know which study group they are in, such as whether they are taking a placebo or an experimental drug. Single blind studies are designed to reduce bias in the results, which means the results are less likely to be affected by factors that aren't related to the treatment or intervention being tested. Double blind trial. A double blind study is a clinical trial where neither the participants nor the researchers know which treatment or intervention the participants are receiving until the trial is over. Here, neither the participants or the researchers know what treatment they are going to get and what they are going to give. This helps ensure that the results of the study are not biased by factors that are not related to the treatment being tested. Triple blind trial. A triple blind study is a type of clinical trial where neither the patients, clinicians, nor the people analyzing the data know which treatment each patient received. This helps to prevent bias in the results, which can occur when researchers analyze data in different ways until they get the outcome they expect. Quadruple blind trial. A quadruple blind trial is a study where the participants, care providers, investigators, and outcome assessors are all blinded, with only the study's primary investigator having information about the interventions and arms. So I hope you all understand regarding the symbolic representation, characteristics of experimental research design, and the methods of randomization and various types of bias in quantitative research design. I hope you all enjoyed the topic. So I am ending the session with a beautiful quote: when life gives you 100 reasons to break down and cry, show life that you have a million reasons to smile and laugh. Stay strong, be happy. Thank you.